Hello, and welcome to Benzinga's very special webinar this morning titled In Good Health. Let's roll our video intro and we'll get started. Hello again, everybody. I'm Matt Steinmetz. I'm Vice President of Virtual Events here at Benzinga, and I'm so pleased to be kicking off today's program. Over the course of the next hour or so, we have three excellent guests. We're going to take a look at the trajectory of U.S. biotech, pharma, and healthcare as we move into Q4 and 2023 winds to a close. We're really excited about the group that we've pulled together today, and we certainly appreciate them lending their many years of industry expertise and experience to our Benzinga audience. Of course, today's webinar is made possible by ServoMed. So on behalf of everyone at Benzinga and watching today's program, a big thank you to our friends at ServoMed. Before we get started, I would urge you to learn more about Benzinga's upcoming live and virtual events. We host a virtual event or a webinar every other Thursday morning around this time. Of course, we are so excited about a pair of events coming up in just about 1 month in New York City. Our FinTech Deal Day is November 13th, and our Future of Digital Assets is November 14th, again, both in New York City. You can learn more about these events and all of our upcoming events at benzinga.com/events. All right, without further ado, let's get today's program underway. Joining me to do that and as our host is my colleague and an editor at Benzinga, Tony Noto. Tony, welcome.
How are you, Matt?
Good to see you, my friend.
It's good to see you. I had such a blast doing this last time, and I'm certainly glad to join us again. I love talking about biotech and pharma and healthcare and all that stuff. So let's get rolling.
Take it away.
All right. Well, first guest, we have a doctor in the house. You know him as the CEO of Conduit. This is Dr. David Tapolczay. Let's bring him on.
Good morning, folks.
How are you, friend?
Very good, thank you.
Well, thank you for joining us. I enjoyed reading about Conduit and its journey to completing a SPAC deal, no less. They're getting rare these days, and it was kind of interesting to read up on it. So just to tee off, David, let's talk a little bit about the journey of Conduit and how it got this deal done. It wrapped up not even a month ago.
That's correct. I think it was the 22nd of September, with trading beginning live on NASDAQ on the 25th of September. And then we did a bell ringing ceremony on the opening bell last Friday.
Were you the one ringing the bell?
Dr. Frida Lewis Hall and myself were jointly ringing the bell.
What's that party like? I just out of curiosity, do they invite you in? Do you get like a nice breakfast? I know there was this big feature in the Wall Street Journal not too long ago that they really pull out all the stops whenever a company gets to ring the opening bell.
It's a very, very exciting platform and a privilege to be part of it. It's my first experience of listing a company on NASDAQ. I've done London Stock Exchange and the alternative investment market here in the UK before, but my first NASDAQ listing. Not Frida's first NASDAQ listing, that was Springworks Therapeutics, but she and I just thoroughly enjoyed the day. We had a good amount of guests with us. There were probably close to 100 people in the audience in total, and it's got a real kind of party vibe feel to it.
Well, I can't imagine people wouldn't want to show up for this because the company is very interesting. It completed its phase 1 trial study. Let's talk a little bit about that. I know that we're going to have another guest on after you, and when I spoke to him, he really stressed how that's key. When success in that phase 1 trial is key to really gaining attention among investors and in the public equities market. So talk to us a little bit about the success that you guys have had with the trial.
So our model is quite unique. We actually license in programs that have successfully already completed phase 1 studies. So at the point that we get access to programs, we know they're safe. They've been into humans and they've got good data to show not their clinical efficacy because it's phase 1, but their safety profile. So Conduit itself is a disease agnostic life science company.
Mm-hmm.
We won't focus on a single disease. And we're utilizing an efficient new operating model for compound development. We fund assets that have been licensed from a major pharmaceutical company. In this case, the first company we've partnered with is AstraZeneca. And we take the already completed phase 1 assets through carefully designed phase 2 studies where we have clear clinical endpoints. And then we seek to license and exit through third-party license deals. This is really quite a very different approach to traditional big pharma model. It's get in, prove it works in man, license it on.
So you partnered with AstraZeneca. Let's talk a little bit about the MO of the company, partnering with businesses and that model. Why is it going to work?
Very, very good question. We believe that the product is going to work, Conduit is going to work by making sure that we ensure a win-win situation for both the companies licensing the product to us, our charity partner or partners who we co-develop the assets with, and then also the companies that we license the product to. Because if everybody is going to win in this process, everybody is going to be successful. It's a really very collaborative model where we collaborate with the initiator, the partner who licenses the product in. We collaborate with a UK registered charity, and we'll come on to potential for US charities shortly. And then we collaborate with the partner that we license it to for phase 3 and further regulatory approval studies that will take the product on its continued journey to the market and, most importantly, to patients.
Speaking of partnerships, Conduit Pharmaceuticals partnered with ClinConnect. That was just a couple of days ago. Wondering if you could talk a little bit about that. I mean, first of its kind is kind of jargon and buzzword, but that's kind of the case here. ClinConnect has an innovative model.
I mean, what we wanted to do was to make sure that our model got the products in the most cost-effective and efficient manner through the development phase and into patients as quickly as possible, because ultimately that's what we're about, getting drugs to patients. It also allows you to get much faster generation of revenue. ClinConnect, we believe, have a unique model that in partnership with our model should see faster regulatory approval, faster completion of clinical trials, more cost-effective clinical trials, and therefore getting drugs to patients more quickly.
Medicines to patients also at a lower cost. I want to talk a little bit about that because that's one of your goals. It's certainly something that's going to come up over the course of this event over the next hour. So let's talk a little bit about how Conduit plans to make medicines more affordable. I mean, this is an event called In Good Health, and a lot of folks stress about that, being able to pay for the medicines.
Absolutely. And in fact, earlier this year, I spoke at the Milken Institute conference in Los Angeles, and the theme of the section I was on was health equity, which is about making sure that medicines get to the patients that need them. So why we anticipate that we will have a good success in that area is, firstly, our operating model. The model is very capital efficient. It is therefore cheaper to get drugs through our model and to the market, which means potentially the drugs are cheaper for the patient. I think the second thing is that we'll work with leading academic clinicians to solve some of the cost challenges. For example, that therapies such as cell-based therapies will incur. So we aim to achieve the same clinical outcomes by use of small molecule, orally available drugs as the cell therapies would achieve. But this would massively increase the access to such treatments to patients, because self-based therapies are going to be hundreds of thousands of pounds per patient to administer.
And we talked a little bit about charities before, and I want to touch upon that again. I mean, charities in the UK, talk to us a little bit about that model. You don't hear that enough from major companies.
Well, I think the charity sector does an amazing job in trying to work with pharma companies to bring new medicines to market. And we realized that. And what we wanted to do was to partner with not just a UK charity, but ideally US charity as well. But we had to start somewhere. So we partnered with a UK registered charity. And we approached AstraZeneca and we got them to license drugs that AstraZeneca were no longer interested in taking forwards, whereby they gift the product across to the charity. We then fund the work necessary to complete the successful phase two. Our first partnership is with the UK's charity, but absolutely we want to work with US-based charities as well, to help them fulfill their charitable objectives by bringing new drugs to market in their specific disease areas. My chairman or chairperson of my board, Dr. Frida Lewis Hall, and I will be reaching out to US-based charities to try and identify assets that, in partnership with those charities, we can help get to patients.
It was interesting reading about your background, former head of chemistry and at LifeArc, well, former CEO at LifeArc, and Dr. Frida is the former chief medical officer at Pfizer. Talk to us a little bit about the lessons that you learned along the way. Perhaps you spoke to Dr. Frida about that, the lessons she learned at Pfizer, bringing it to Conduit, and how that factors into the partnership with AstraZeneca.
Sure. So I was very privileged and fortunate to meet Frida during my time as the CEO of LifeArc. Frida approached me because she wanted to start an innovative business model, a new model of how we could take drugs from big pharma companies and, by working with charities, bring them to the market. The company Frida started was called SpringWorks Therapeutics. It's gone on to have huge success. Frida and I co-funded that. She put money from Pfizer in, I put money from LifeArc in. And we went on a journey together. And it's actually the conclusion of that journey that led to the evolution of this model. So after we had done SpringWorks, Frida and I sat down on many an occasion and said, if we wanted to do it again, how might we do it slightly differently? So what the model I've described is just simply an evolution of the model that we previously did. And after these discussions, I just turned to Frida and said, would you want to be chairman or chairperson of the board of directors of this? And thankfully, she agreed straight away. So I'm really, really looking forward to working with Frida and the rest of my directors, team, partners, charities, etc., to make this as big a success as it can possibly be.
Well, what needs to change about the pharmaceutical sector, in your own words? I know that it's under scrutiny all the time. We saw regulation recently being put forward by the Biden administration about lowering prices for medicines, and so pharmaceutical companies can compete. It's something that's always a talking point, especially going into an election year here in the States. In your opinion, what needs to change?
I think it's an excellent question, and clearly it's not a simple question to answer. Otherwise, people have already answered it. So I think the problem has become the cost of excellence across all phases of pharma R&D. Starting right back at early target detection, through target validation, through identification of lead compounds, preclinical, phase 1, 2, 3, regulatory approval. The cost of excellence across every single piece of that paradigm has become almost prohibitively expensive. Analysts will tell you that it can cost up to $2 billion to get a new drug to market. What we're trying to do is to work with as part of a very exclusive relay team where we will be excellent in the bit of the race that we run, but we are not trying to be excellent across the entire phase. So we partner with companies who have successfully taken a compound to phase 1. They've run their leg. They then pass it to us. We will be expert in taking those compounds successfully through phase 2 in a cost-efficient, effective, safe manner. And then we've run our leg of the relay race. Then we pass the product back to a company that has all of the necessary skills and capabilities to conduct large phase 3 studies and has the manufacturing, distribution, and marketing capabilities to get the product to the market. So rather than a long marathon by a single runner, we want to split it into chunks where we have really good runners whose expertise lies in the particular leg of the relay that they're running. And ours is phase 2.
As a runner, not a very good one, but I appreciate that metaphor. Last question. I would love to know what you have planned for the rest of the year. Is there any sort of clue or curtain raiser you can provide for the folks watching on YouTube or wherever they get their webinars?
So we see the listing very much as the beginning of a journey for us. We think it's going to be an exciting journey. We think there's going to be a lot of press releases and announcement around initiating clinical studies, around first patient recruitment, successful completion of clinical studies, and then finally, obviously, reporting hopefully successful outcome on those clinical studies. I see more news in the partnership space. I mentioned to you, Frida and I want to reach out to US charities. We have a partnership with the UK charity. I want to establish more partnerships with US charities. So I think it's very much the start of a journey for us. And Frida and I are both really excited about where we can take that journey through to fulfill the potential of the model that we're operating. And I think that will lead to significant investor return, as well as improving the lives potentially of millions of patients worldwide.
Excellent. Well, Dr. David Tapolczay,
Thank you
joining
very much.
us on In Good Health. Thank you so much for coming on and joining us. I hope to interview you and Dr. Frida in the future.
It's been a great pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
All right, moving along, we have our next guest on deck. He's a familiar face and name on Benzinga.com. You've probably read his research notes. Please welcome Andreas Argyrides, the biotech equity research analyst at Wedbush. And there he is.
Hey, Tony, how are you?
Yeah. Good. How are you?
Pleasure to be here. Good.
It's always a pleasure to have you. I don't know if you got a chance to listen to Dr. David, but his interview was great. He talked a lot about the things that you and I have spoken about. One being how tough the sector is. And I couldn't help but notice in a recent Wedbush report that was sent to me, right there in bold, it's been a cruel, cruel summer for biotech. And that's like a softball for us. Our writers who cover this space, our ears perk when we see that. Talk to us about why it's been a cruel, cruel summer.
Well, that's a throwback to the 80s, that song too, right? So good reference to my colleague who came up with that title. Yeah, so biotech, it has been hard for biotech investors, not just this summer, but for the past several years. And that's not factoring, that there has been what is typically a driver for investment in the sector, which is M&A. I mean, there has been some pretty decent M&A activity going on. There are probably a couple of reasons we can point to. A higher interest rate environment generally is a risk-off sentiment in biotech is a risky sector. There are maybe some concerns around pricing with the Inflation Reduction Act. So again, generalist participation, maybe focusing a little bit on that. There have been, again, some notable other trends in terms of, like, let's say, first cycle approvals at the FDA. Those are down, I think, 95% in 2018. We're getting through first time, but now it's about, let me see what my notes say, 76% or so. So, I mean, there are some things to point to. With that said, I think it's a stock picking environment. And there's reasons to really be bullish. And one quick tip that I can add before you ask your next question is that investors that we're talking to are actually optimistic for 2014. I'm sorry, 2024. Apologies for that.
24, yeah. Oh, we're still stuck in the past from the 80s music.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, I have definitely other questions to ask you, but 2024, I mean, once Halloween ends, people are in holiday mode. They're kind of looking forward to the next year, starting in November. Why should we be bullish about 2024? You know, the last time we covered looking forward into 2023, we couldn't anticipate just how messy the start of the year was. Those first 2 quarters, the IPO market is still sluggish. M&A, you talked about some M&A deals. Amgen completing the Horizon deal at something like $28 billion. That was big, but is there more activity on the horizon, or is that just a, I don't know, like a blip on the radar?
Well, I mean, going to my stat sheet here, I mean, there are so far 28 acquisitions in 2023, 14 of which were greater than $1 billion, which compares to about 11 from 2022. So I think, again, M&A is still something to pay attention to. I think that there are companies that, as they advance, late stage companies, and more, we're probably getting, you know, at least in our universe, we're getting to the point where there are more companies that have revenues or products that are anticipated to come on that will start generating revenues. Those companies are attractive investments here. So I wouldn't balk, or use the kind of experience from 23 carrying it forward. That also said, there are a lot of companies that are trading below cash, are probably near their 52-week lows. And the sense that we get from talking with investors is that there's an opportunity here to find those companies. And this is kind of falls into like a bit of a cycle that happens in biotech, where a lot of companies, get to these trading at cash value or 52-week lows. And what happens is, you get a resurgence, and that's where they get their multiples on their investment. So we think that is what 24 is setting up to look like.
Okay, so I think we still have you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, I'm here. Hope I didn't get cut off.
Okay, great. Good. Let's talk a little bit about those companies that people might want to add to their portfolios. I mean, yesterday when we touched base and preparing for this conversation, we talked a little bit about ARS Pharmaceuticals. Talk to us a little bit about that. They had a little bit of trouble getting their product, Neffy. Neffy is kind of a pithy, cute name, but it didn't do so well with the FDA. What's your take on that company scenario?
Yeah, so back to the conversation that we had about first cycle approvals being down, and the FDA, I guess, raising the bar for innovation and rewarding companies as such. I mean, ARS has a great product. It's called Neffy. It's an intranasal epinephrine. A lot of people have been excited about this product coming on. They were the unfortunate recipients of a late, or really like 11th hour last minute decision by the FDA to take a post-marketing requirement, which means after approval, and make it a pre-marketing. So they're asking the company to run a repeat dose study under a nasal allergen challenge study. It's when they induce swelling, a congestion in the nose called rhinitis, and they're asking them to do that just to see kind of what how the product would act then, right, from a safety and efficacy standpoint. Low technical risk, in our opinion, from the experts we speak to. So we think that, to be honest, this is a delay of, most a year, probably sooner than that they get approved. And what that essentially does is gives our investors opportunity to get into the stock now at this valuation, with the promise that this is going to be a big disruptor in the space, which we think is the case. I think this is going to be a big product.
And how disruptive to the space? I mean, you follow Aquestive Therapeutics. That's a rival of ARS, ours, ticker SPRY. Aquestive is AQST. Talk to us a little bit about the effect that a major development like Neffy could have on rivals in the space.
Well, look, so these are called no needle alternatives to the EpiPen, right? And so there's a decent chunk of the patient population out there who have type 1 allergies at the risk of anaphylaxis that have fears of needles, and there is a real risk that in the event that they are having a reaction, that they, for whatever reason, don't decide to inject themselves. We've heard cases where it was too late and that patient ended up dying. And so what Neffy does, and the proposition here for Neffy specifically, is, let's say you even have a sense that something's coming on. If you spray it in your nose, you can delay that major onset of anaphylaxis. What Aquestive is proposing is a sublingual version that's under your tongue. It's like a little film, if you remember the Listerine sublingual mints or whatever it was. It's just like that. Yeah, I mean, I actually have, if you could probably see, I have a little bit of the package for them. It's a super thin, razor thin.
Okay.
Yeah, but Aquestive, they're behind in terms of getting to market, about a couple of years behind. They're they're about to run a pivotal PK study to get to an NDA. But so competitive, yes. Differentiated in the mode of delivery. I would say first to market is a big advantage. But look, they're going to pave the way for a product like Aquestive, and getting patients, caregivers, parents the opportunity to think about something other than the EpiPen. So it could, in Aquestive's case, it could be good to be second to market, given the differentiated mode. Other products, similar delivery, that are fast followers to Neffy may not fare as well. That will be more of a product-specific comparison there.
Do you think the FDA is too strict, or do you think that perhaps it's for the best?
No, I mean, listen. We've debated this with some other products in the past, and higher visibility approvals with like Sarepta's DMD product. I know the integrity of the FDA is key. It should always have a high bar for success. I'm not saying that they're doing this deliberately in any way. Obviously, in their case, they want to make there's a benefit cost equation that they always have to consider. That is, do the benefits outweigh the risk in this case? And so they always are more on the side of safety. So if they feel comfortable about a product, then they let the market bear out how it will do. Their job is just to not get themselves in a position where they have to address these issues for a product in Congress. And that's back to the proposition with Neffy. This is going to be a big product. If it's going to be in the hands of millions of people at some point, they just don't want to have to say, listen, we didn't address every specific possibility out there. It was unfortunate the way they communicated that to the company. They were a week away from the PDUFA, the approval date, before they got this notice. So that was not fair to them and to investors. But again, this has created a really, really interesting buying opportunity.
And with that, let's talk a little bit about buying opportunities. You said generalists in the space is a good thing. We have a lot of retail investors watching this webinar, following the coverage from Benzinga. What are some of your picks? What are some of the companies that they should be watching, that should be on their radar?
So, I mean, we have a company called Moonlake Immunotherapies. The ticker is MLTX. They just presented their 12-week data at a dermatology conference in Europe, EADV it's called. This is a nanobody, kind of a small monoclonal antibody that is used for the treatment of hidradenitis suppurativa. It's a chronic inflammatory skin disease. We think this is has best-in-class potential. This is going up against some other products out there, one from UCB called bimekizumab, and also the kind of only approved product is Humira, which is well known. It's $1 billion market, but what we like about this is the bar has essentially been raised by sonelokimab. We think it's best in class, and there's an opportunity. It's a big unmet need, and it's an opportunity to grow the market. So they're going to present 24-week data imminently. We don't know when that is, but it should be in the next couple of days, next week. We will see if those meet our expectations. And additionally, they have 12-week data in psoriatic arthritis in early November. So with those two catalysts, if they're positive, we think the stock has meaningful upside here, and it's on the best ideas list for that reason.
Last question. Before we go, I want to get your thoughts on the rest of the year. Any hot takes on the sector?
Again, as I mentioned previously, we think that this is the rest of the year is a setup into 24, which should be a better year. Macro kind of environment notwithstanding, there are some catalysts that I think are high on investors' minds. Sarepta's phase 3 for DMD. I believe that would be a positive catalyst for the sector if it's good. Obviously, it would expand their patient population potentially, outside of the 4 and 5 year olds to 6 and 7. But it would bode well for that just entire space and for generalist interest. I think that's what we're really hoping to see, that generalists come back to the space because they realize that biotech is still an area where you can get meaningful upside from a lot of the innovation that's happening there. So stay tuned for those updates, and looking forward to 24.
Andreas, thank you so much. Your wisdom is always valued here at Benzinga. We appreciate the chat.
Yeah, looking forward to the next time. Thanks, Tony.
Right. Take care. All right, moving right along, I'm going to bring on my colleague, Aaron Bree.
What is up, Tony? How are we doing today?
I'm doing good. I wish I had the equipment you have, the nice headphone, the big microphone. That's nice.
Hey, come down to Detroit, Tony. You're welcome anytime. I know you're up in New York, living large, right?
Yeah, as large as I can in a tiny apartment.
Yeah. Oh, come on. Tony, we know you're in some penthouse in upper West Side Manhattan.
I will play the role. I'll play the part.
There you go. No. All right. Well, Tony, that was a great interview just now. I love tuning in. We're going to keep it ticking along here. I will be speaking to Dr. John Alum, the CEO of ServoMed, on the NASDAQ now, ticker CRVO. So without further ado, let's welcome Dr. Alum on the show. How we doing? Dr. Alum, how you doing this Thursday?
Yep. Doing great. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Of course, it's great. It's great to have you. So before we get started into the questions, I've got some, right here, ready to go. Why don't we just do a quick, brief overview of what ServoMed is? I know, a couple mergers, everything. So just for our audience to kind of like get a grasp on exactly what ServoMed is, why don't you give us a brief overview?
So ServoMed was formed from the merger between a private company, EIP Pharma, which I had been the CEO of, working on neurodegenerative diseases, with Diffusion Pharmaceuticals. We merged in August, and it's with that we renamed the company as ServoMed. Servo comes from the French word for the brain, cerveau, CERVEAU. And so ServoMed is medicines for the brain, where we believe, which is what we're here to talk about, with the team we've built. We have true scientific and industry leaders around neurodegenerative diseases that we put in. It's an internal team, it's our board of directors, it's our scientific advisory board. When you look at the individuals who are on it, we firmly place ourselves as a leader in the neurodegenerative diseases space, particular in dementia in dementia with Lewy bodies.
Got it. So what is DLB, and what does the current treatment landscape look like?
So DLB is dementia with Lewy bodies. It's the third most common chronic neurodegenerative disease. There's Alzheimer's, there's Parkinson's, and then it's DLB. It is a dementia like Alzheimer's, but it's actually a very distinct disease, very distinct dementia. It's not a memory disorder. It's problems with attention or concentration, judgment. And also what distinguishes it is the very early on and all the way through, there is effects on motor function, particularly in terms of walking. When you put that together, right from even very early in the disease process, the impact on patients in terms of quality of life, caregivers, caregiver burden, medical care costs, all of it is actually greater than with Alzheimer's disease, stage for stage, and actually progresses faster. There are no approved therapies. There are some symptomatic therapies that actually, interestingly, in the beginning, work better than they do in Alzheimer's disease. And it's something we will talk about as we go through this. In DLB, what distinguishes also from Alzheimer's disease is that the level of neuronal nerve cell death, actual neurodegeneration, in the early and throughout much of the disease process is actually less in Alzheimer's disease. So it makes it, if you have the right drug and the right approaches, it actually makes it a more treatable disease than Alzheimer's. Though at the same time today, in the absence of treatment, the medical need is greater. And then I'll just add from a commercial opportunity standpoint, this is really one of the great untapped areas, perhaps in the industry and certainly in CNS disease. It's large numbers. It's similar to the number of patients with multiple sclerosis. Again, high unmet medical need, which gives pricing leverage, no approved therapies, and it is a specialist disease.
Got it. And then so I'm probably going to mispronounce this, doctor, but the NEPHIMMIMID has the potential to be the first disease-modifying approach because it treats the primary pathology, cholinergic degeneration in the basal forebrain. Can you tell us where NEPHIMMIMID came from and why you believe it is positioned for success?
So everything that you said is correct. NEPHIMMIMID it's an oral drug that is with that drug is the leader in the DLB space. It's the only drug that has positive phase 2 data, and we just recently, it's the first drug to enter, first potentially disease-modifying drug to enter phase 2B clinical trials in a confirmatory trial in the DLB space. The drug was licensed by the predecessor company, EIP Pharma, a few years back. It had been developed by Vertex Pharmaceuticals as a very different science and biology outside of the brain for rheumatoid arthritis. We licensed it out, and Vertex had stopped development because it actually preferentially goes to the brain. It has higher brain concentrations than outside of the brain, which for rheumatoid arthritis was a handicap, but it's a great feature when you're going after CNS disease. And over the last few years, we've really built out this novel science with the underlying mechanism, and we've shown, and this is in major publications. One was a year ago in Nature Communications. We've shown that it acts on the specific mechanisms by which the specific part of the brain is impacted in DLB that's most important for that disease, which is, as you said, the basal forebrain cholinergic system. We show in animals, we do more than just slow progression. It actually reverses the neurodegenerative process and disease progression. And with it, fully restores functionality in the animal model of that degeneration in that part of the brain. And then again, we have positive phase 2 data that was published, the primary analysis in Nature Communication in a top-tier journal about a year ago, that shows that it's all going in the same direction in the clinic. We're seeing improvements on measures of cholinergic function, including in overall dementia severity.
That's great. And then why is the disease modifying important? Aren't there 80 drugs out there doing that already?
So the first potentially approved for disease. So there are AD drugs, but they are what we've had until very, very recently is they're symptomatic therapies. They compensate for, they boost some aspect of that's impacted, but they actually don't target the underlying disease process. In AD, we do have the first approved therapies that may have some effects on underlying disease process, or they're certainly targeting some aspect of the disease progression, and that's in the case of Alzheimer's, that's amyloid beta. There's no such thing in DLB, and amyloid beta is not the process in DLB. It is in that cholinergic system, and there's nothing there. One of the things we've seen in Alzheimer's disease with amyloid beta, the effects that they may have are relatively modest. I think you probably had those discussions here. Again, some of that we believe has to do with in AD, there's too much neuronal loss already that prevents you to being able to have actually some restoration of functions and along with having effect on disease progression. In DLB, there is this opportunity. And for us, what's really exciting is that we published actually just last month a paper looking back at our phase 2A results. We can look at there's a blood test that we can utilize to identify those patients who have more limited nerve cell loss in the DLB patients. And in those patients, we're getting actually that much better results and actually substantial treatment effects with moderate to large treatment effect sizes versus placebo. Really effects that have not been seen in any trial in either DLB or NAD. And what's great for us is that what that allows us to do is then design the phase 2B study where we're firmly focused in that half or so of the DLB patients who are actually the ones who have limited neuronal loss, and you can really get standout results in. And that what it does is it substantially increases our statistical power in that study, and we believe substantially increases our probability of success in the phase 2B study that we're actively enrolling patients today, and we're looking to complete enrollment in the first half of next year. And the data readout will be approximately 6 months after that, so sometime in the second half of next year. And importantly for your listeners, we are fully funded through to that data readout. We have a large grant from the NIH, a $21 million grant that funds the clinical study. And what that merger gave us is the operating costs to be able to run the company and support that clinical trial out to that primary efficacy data read.
Got it. So basically, you're saying at least in the interim, no need to raise any cash or anything like that. And then so we are running up on time here, Doctor. Looking down the road, can you provide a snapshot of the commercial opportunity for NEPHIMMIMID for DLB? Should it be successful in the clinic that, like you said, you guys are enrolling in right now?
Again, as I discussed, it's a great commercial opportunity. It is in our in the S4 around the merger. You can go back and look at it. There is a model that was actually analyzed by the bank and provided in there. In the U.S. alone, with the assumptions that were in there, it's greater than a $3 billion market for the individual drug,
wow,
NEPHIMMIMID. And I think what's important for the investor who's looking into this phase 2B study is that it is the reason why at the end of this study, we believe that there will be a substantial value in the asset and in the company, because it's designed and between phase 2B and phase 3, the main efficacy risk is we're going to go from a 4-month duration in phase 2B to 6-month duration in phase 3. We already know that for approval, it's a 6-month duration study to get to this major commercial opportunity. And I think the listener can come to their own conclusion of how much risk is there between those two, between going from 4 months to 6 months. I think it's relatively modest. And because of that reason, most of that value in terms of probability of success, and you do a risk-adjusted model of what that commercial return means, will actually be captured, we believe, at the time we have that positive phase 2b data. And that's really the fundamental investment thesis. And for you to judge what is the probability of success in our phase 2b study. And some of that we will actually have a presentation. There's a presentation from one of our investigators at the major conference around clinical trials in dementia called CTAD. That's in Boston next week. I'm sorry, 2 weeks from now. We have a presentation that I think puts together a lot of this and really strongly informs on what is the probability of success in this ongoing phase 2b study. And I would encourage everyone to follow us on our website, and we'll have it, and see, again, as I said, that everything I talked about, the science, clinical data, it's published, it's on our website, it's all out there.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to follow along this story. It sounds like you guys have some very, very promising things coming up. Well, Dr. Alam, thank you again for joining us on our In Good Health webinar on Benzinga. Like I said, looking forward to following along the story. Hopefully, we'll get to reconnect in the future, and you can come back on and share some exciting news with us.
Excellent. I look forward to it. Thank you again for having us.
As do I. All right. Thank you. All right, guys. Again, that was ServoMed on the NASDAQ now, ticker CRVO. And yeah, I think that's our last company of the webinar today. So I'm going to welcome back Matt on the stream here.
Hey, Aaron.
Matt,
great job with Dr. Alam there. Nicely done.
Yeah, it was fun. I always, it's good to catch up. I actually, talked to Longeveron earlier in the day. It's like great to just be in the biotech mood all day. I love being in the medical space.
Exciting stuff happening for sure. Well, nicely done, Aaron. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it, Matt. I'll hand it over to you.
Great. And thank you again to our terrific trio of guests today for sharing their deep expertise and analysis throughout the event. One more big thank you to our sponsor at ServoMed. And finally, a big thank you to all of you for taking the time out to join us today. Be sure to check out upcoming live and virtual events at benzinga.com/events from the entire team here. Thanks for joining us. I hope we'll see you at another Benzinga event real soon. Take care.